First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go along that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that thing.
No, calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
okay,
an
he's good too.
erratic
Mikhail
detective, is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. A pleasant Wednesday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. We have one of the most courageous and bold public servants that have served this country. He served this country as a captain in the Air Corps of the Guyana Defense Force, and then retired from that and went into business and is now the security advisor to the President of Guyana. But I use the word courageous because I think it's quite known in Guyana during that incident in Madia where there was a dormitory fire and 20 children lost their life. That he explained in our program, and it took courage to fly that night into Madia, and he asked his son to do that to the detriment of his life. But if you listen to the adventures of GERRY GOUVEIA, you would know that he has served his country well. Our guest this evening knows no introduction. A businessman, but generally a man who lines with the people. Our guest is Captain GERRY GOUVEIA, businessman, but currently security advisor to the President of Guyana. When Leonard Craig and I were discussing this interview, Craig asked me to ask GOUVEIA if he has political ambition. So I will ask Craig to ask Jerry that.
You want to set me up, right, Freddie? You have the question you want to ask?
If he has political ambition?
Well,
the answer is no.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. I am very impressed with Irfan Ali. I've been working him now directly for the last 4 years, and he's a phenomenal young man.
4 years,
I think Guyana is very, very fortunate to have him at this time. In order to set a time for everything, and I believe that with the advent not only of the wealth from the oil, but in this time of the world's history, I think President Ali is the right man at the right time to take Guyana to the next level. Most countries that find oil end up sometimes going down the wrong path with people who don't understand finances and how they structure the economy. President Ali is well qualified, both academically, as his attitude and his behavior. In terms of, he got a PhD in urban planning, which is a lot of what
University of West Indies.
Right, which is what is happening now in terms of developing Guyana and our infrastructure. He also he's a finance man. He's an economic man. He's surrounded with people like Ashley Singh and Bharat Jagdeo who are experts in the field of economics. And I think they're a good team. And he particularly is a leader now. We are very fortunate to have him. So I have no political ambition. I'm here very happy to work with him and continue doing that at his pleasure.
Well, if he wins, I can't see the configurations of electoral politics that would cause him to lose the election. You're going to continue in your advisory capacity.
Well, like I said, I serve at the pleasure of the president,
yeah. And if you retain, that's all right.
I could do that. I will serve him in the private sector. I will serve him running my company, or like I had to give up the management of my company over the last 4 years. My son took it over, and but I'm here to serve at the president's pleasure.
All right. Before I bring Craig in, if in my life someone sit down and your name comes up, and tell you what you know about GERRY GOUVEIA, instantly I would speak about my interfacing with you in the 2020 elections. And I think this country, outside of the international observers and the diplomats, this country owe you a debt of gratitude of what you did in the 2020 election. You were sitting with Gilgari and I, and you said to us, "They not count, this was Tuesday. I don't understand, they're not counting the votes." That was for Region 4. And he said, "I'm going right now and pick up the US ambassador, and we're going to look into this thing." So elections is a few months away. What is GERRY GOUVEIA doing? It's a different thing now. You're not in the private sector. You're now as a security advisor. We going to have any problems? Do you anticipate any problems?
Unfortunately, I am seeing a particular trend and characteristics by actors in our opposition that is getting me a little uncomfortable, because I believe they're spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation about GECOM and the electoral system, which I am prepared to talk to you about, because I believe there's a lot of lack of knowledge on the robustness of GECOM, the accuracy and security of the GECOM system. I hear all this talk about bloated lists, and it's all unfortunate. It's spreading a lot of misinformation and causing sometimes a distrust in our electoral system. And in fact, Freddie, I'll tell you, we here in Ghana have one of the most robust and secure electoral systems in the world. And we could talk a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. Before Craig comes in, on a lighter note, how many of those you have? That's not a normal show, Jack.
It is.
It's a normal show.
It's what I work with.
Right. And you have, how many you have?
Freddie wants one.
No, Craig is tall. That was no good on Craig. I'm a short little piece of man.
All right. You have introduced the issue of GECOM and stuff like that. The hot button topic now is fingerprint biometrics and stuff like that. What's your views?
Let me go back and tell you that in 2006, Freddie, the PNC was actually protesting under the slogan "No verification, no vote," and no verification, no elections. So the Private Sector Commission met with them and asked them, "Well, what is it you're talking about?" And they said that they wanted biometrics. This is in 2006. So we sat down to find out, well, what is it that they really meant by biometrics? They didn't really give us a clear understanding. At the time I was still studying at the Defense University in Washington, and I was going back and forth. And so immediately after that meeting, I went up to do another module, and I was there in the classroom, and the module we were doing coincidentally was biometrics for airport security. So I asked the lecturer when he finished, I said, "How do we use biometrics in elections?" Because I really didn't know. And he said, "We just finished a program in Jamaica. Why don't you ask them?" So I called the Chamber of Commerce. I think I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time. And I had our Chamber of Commerce call the Chamber of Commerce in Jamaica, arranged for me to meet with the Elections Commission in Jamaica. I flew from Washington. I went straight to Jamaica and met with the Elections Commission in GECOM in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And they walked me through the process they were doing, and I videotaped it on my phone, and I brought back the videotape. I I gave Robert Corbyn a copy. He was the leader of the opposition at the time. I gave George Bally, who was the head of GECOM at the time, and Barrett Jagdeo a copy of it. And basically, they were showing me what they were doing. And I came back home and I sent the video. And then subsequently, GECOM went to Jamaica and they introduced the biometrics in Guyana in 2000. And we actually did it completely in 2008. 2008 is when, for the first time, what we did as a country, we scrapped the old NRR, the National Register of Registrants. Scrapped because that was done manually. And then for the first time, we introduced the biometrics the way they were doing it in Jamaica. So what happened is we had to buy a very sophisticated software. They spent like $700,000 for the software. And then we had
Chinese or American?
US dollars, right? And then when you go to register, you have to register all your 10 fingerprints and on a special paper. And then that paper is then scanned into the computer and converted to a digital fingerprint, right? So it goes from, and if for any reason when it goes to be scanned in the computer, the fingerprint is not, the computer rejects it. And so you got to go back and do it again. So that's the first time we started doing that. Now, and it was very important because you're doing it to make sure they don't have duplicates on the list. So you can have a similar face, but you can't have similar fingerprints. And so it was the first time we did that registration. Now, in this registration process, remember to register, and the new way we're doing it, it was a very secure process. You go to register, you have a PNC person, a PVP person, an AFC person, or whoever else in the room, and the GECOM staff. When you go in there, you present your birth certificate or whatever ID card, and everybody in the room have to make sure that you are the person that is presenting themselves to be registered. And if any one of them have a doubt that you're the person, then the process is stopped until they could verify it. So the registration process is a very safe and secure process to get onto the NRR in the first place. And then when they finish registering with your photo face, with your biometric fingerprints scanned into the computer against your biodata, then they will come and visit you where you're living to make sure that where you're living is where you are, right? That was the first time, and this started to happen across the country. So it was a brand new house-to-house registration in 2008, and it was also followed by what is called the continuous cycles of registration. So you see, when they were doing the house-to-house, a person like me who's a pilot, I'm never home. So they go to my house, I'm not there, so I missed the registration process. A miner, a logger, an Amerindian who are hunting or whatever, and they're not there. So what they did is they introduced what is called the continuous cycles of registration. So other than the house-to-house, we now open registration booths across the country 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. So people who have missed the house-to-house could go to a registration booth and register and get yourself onto the NRR. They started also registering school children, 14-year-olds, right? So when you register a 14-year-old, when you become 18, the software automatically kick you over to eligible voter, right? And this is what started in a very fantastic way in 2008. And then Guyanese, for example, who are living overseas and come home, they want to register, they want the Guyanese ID card, and they will walk into one of the booths and register themselves. So if you imagine that if we have 100,000 Guyanese, for example, coming back home over a period of a year or 2 years, they're going to these booths and they register. So when you hear people talk about these, that the voters list is bloated, it is because they're comparing it to what is the resident population in Guyana. But the resident population of Guyana does not reflect Guyanese population in the world. And if you're Guyanese anywhere in the world, if you come home, you have a right to register if you want to register. You have to come here to register. What is also important is that when you get the ID card, if you want to vote, you have to be here to vote. So we have no overseas voting. So Guyanese who are living across the world, you can't vote overseas. You have to come home to vote. But to vote, you have to be in the voters list, right? You don't have to have an ID card to vote. You got to be able to be here and present and be on the voters list. So Guyanese have been registering. So what has been happening then is that the NRR has been now more effectively capturing the Guyanese population. So when you look at the NRR, it may look like it's big, but it's big because it's capturing all. It started with the 14-year-olds, then it captured all the Guyanese who might not have been captured before, the pilots, the loggers, the miners, and it also captured Guyanese who've been coming home on holidays from 2008 to now. So you're looking at about 14 years, how long that is, how many years that is. And so that is why our eligible voters list is so big, because it encompasses not only who's living here, but Guyanese all over the world who have been able to register over the last how many decades? How many decades it was since 2008? And so that's the first thing that we need to understand. So the biometrics, now what's important to note is that after each registration cycle, that entire database is sent back now to the manufacturer or to a particular site in the US, where that database is scanned for any duplicates, right? And if there's any duplicates, it comes back to GECOM, and there is a very rigid investigating process that goes out to decide which of the fingerprints will stay and which will be deleted, right? And it's a process inside of GECOM that is a very rigid process. So the database, when it's finished, and the eligible voters list, was only one person could be there with the fingerprints, and it represents what is actually Guyanese available to vote. So this thing about now, if it's true, if you register and you're overseas, to go on the list, like I said, it's a very rigid process. To come off the list is also a very rigid process. To come off the list, you've got to have your death certificate, and there's a process at GECOM. Every month, the GRO, I think it is the registration office, would send all the deaths, registered deaths in Guyana, to the elections office, and they will then go through it and take you off the list because they will get the death certificates. And that is a process that goes on every month. Every month that happens at GECOM. So it keeps cleansing the list of people who might have passed away. And then, but if people die in Toronto or Miami or Barbados or wherever, and we don't get the death certificates, that GECOM cannot take you off the list until that. But during a claims and objection period, if you go to the list and you see somebody is dead, you can make a note to GECOM and say this person is dead, and then GECOM could actually launch an investigation, maybe find their families but until somebody point that out in a claims and objection, the person stays there. But the point is, if you're dead, you can't vote. Now, so that is the first thing with the list itself, which is very, very robust and secure, and it is secure further by your biometrics. Every single person on the list now, as we speak, is secured by the biometrics, right? That's the first thing I want to tell you. So,
just let me interject a little. If I miss the registration and I come when the centers are open for claims and objection and talking about now, do they still acquire fingerprint?
Every single time. Every single 100% of every person. Now, the booths are not only open for claims and objection. It opens throughout the year. Claims and objection come at a particular different issue. The booths, the continuous cycles of registration booths happen across the country at scheduled times, and GECOM would publish it so people could know they could go there. But during the claims and objection, of course, when they finish compiling and constructing the list, then they put it out to all the political parties, the whole public, and then people could go through the list. And if you have a problem, you could raise it with them.
So in relation, it's clear that you have what you've just enunciated, that we have a biometric system. What is it that the PNC wants then?
Well,
when they speak about we need to have biometrics,
but I think part of the problem is I don't think there's a lot of people who understand and know the fact that biometrics is used as a match for people so they don't have duplicates in the list. Biometrics is not used anywhere in the world for voter identification. So, for example, in the US, there's nowhere in the United States where biometrics is used as a voter identification because it's problematic. And especially in a country that is so spread out like us. So if you attempt to say, and this is what some people are saying, that they want now a device that could connect to that database, and it sounds easy. So a device that could connect to that database, where you put your finger on this device, and it goes to the database and pick up your biodata and bring it on the screen, right? So you have your picture and so on. So everybody could see that that's you. And it's not a bad idea. The truth of the matter is, though, it got a lot of technical glitches. That is why the US don't use it. Nowhere in the US system you go to a polling booth and anybody asking you for biometrics for identification. They use your identification card, right? They use your, whatever it is, your passport or whatever else. But they do not use that because, especially if you have a power failure and something happened to the machine, if you're in the hinterland and a place like Guyana. So when you're depending on technology to that effect and you have, for some reason, a technical glitch, you know what happened in 1997? Freddie, in 1997, both parties came together and agree that they would introduce a voter ID card. And both parties agree on this in Parliament, but they did not amend the Constitution. So and this voter ID card is a good idea. So when you go to vote, you vote and you drop the card inside the box. So when you're ready to count, the ID card's got to match among the ballots in the box, right? That's the first thing. So that you can't have anybody stuffing ballot boxes. A person turned up at the polling station and she didn't have an ID card and they didn't allow her to vote, and so she took them to court and the whole elections were vitiated because they said they violated her constitutional right. So now we have to be very, very careful that people who intend is to disrupt the electoral process don't introduce things that could complicate the process and become a reason for vitiating elections. So when you're dealing with something as big as 2,300 polling stations, we have to ensure the manual systems backed up by your ID card, backed up by whatever else the people in the room. Because if you go to vote, let me just go to this, Freddie. If when you go to vote and you walk into the room to vote, you don't even have to produce ID card. There's a PPP person, there's a PNC person, the AFC person, there are observers in the room, and there are 5 GECOM staff in every polling station. So when you come into the room and you say, "Hi, I'm GERRY GOUVEIA," everybody in that room have to be satisfied because they will now go, each one of them carries a folio in front of them. That folio got my picture in it. So I come in the room and I said, "I'm GERRY GOUVEIA." So what they do, they'll go to the folio, they'll find my name, right? If I have my ID card, it makes it easier because then they'll match it with my ID card number. And all of them have to, first of all, make sure it's on their list. Then they take off my name and they know that's how I vote. If anyone in that room, if it's uncomfortable that I'm GERRY GOUVEIA, they raise an objection and I'm put aside and go for a secondary identification process, which is the affidavit and so on and so on. But you cannot vote until everybody in the room, including all the political parties, agree that this person is who the person says they are, right? So it's a very, very robust system. And because of the biometrics in the system, I could only be there one time. It's not a case where I could go register in Kingston or register in Campbellville or register in Bel Air Park, because the system will pick you up right away and it will show a duplicates or triplicates on the list with your fingerprints. And that's how they will evict you. Now, understand that if you have, for example, a voters list of 400,000 people, that voters list of 400,000 people is then sectioned off into 600 for Bel Air Park, 600 for Campbellville, and so on. So they take it out to the regions. But when you pull back, the matrix of the mathematics bring you back to 400. So there's nowhere that you'll have, right? So the whole thing is a mathematical matrix that all these polling stations, so you take the numbers of voters in that polling station, add them back up together, and you come back up to the number that was first of all on the eligible voters list. And so the system is a very safe and secure system. We could stop there for a moment if you guys have any questions you wanted about that process. So anybody tells me that that a strange person would come and register, if a person come in who are not eligible to be registered, come in that room to be registered, somebody in that room will stop the person, right? If I'm a PNC person and a person comes into that room and that person, I'm not satisfied who he is, who he says he is, I will stop the process. And if I don't, then I'm doing my party an injustice. Everyone. So the system to get on the list, to vote, is very, very secure.
Despite that, there are people who believe that, and some who claim that they joke the system.
You're lying.
You were saying that is impossible.
I'm saying that they're liars. And you know, let me give an example. A man told me, I was in a meeting a couple of days ago, a diplomat, and he says to me that a member of the opposition told him that a man came from Bangladesh or someplace like that. No, not voted. And in 2 months in Guyana, he went to get an ID card. And I said to him, that is highly impossible. It's highly impossible. It cannot happen. And the only way you could do it is if you have a massive conspiracy, all the political parties agree. If this man who comes from Bangladesh or wherever he came from walk in the room and says, I want to register myself, I mean, unless all the political parties are foolish in the room, that you're going to register this man who came from Bangladesh 2 months ago, how in the name of heaven is he being registered with a system that is so tight and secure at the registration process? How is he getting on? How is he getting on? It's crazy. So people make all kinds of wild acquisitions without understanding the safeguards and the system in place to prevent that. Another man, the same guy said to me, well, another person told me that Amerindian chiefs across the country could put people on the voters list. I said, man, come on, you know, that is not true. It is not possible. It is impossible. What an Armenian chief could do, it is because we may have a lot of our indigenous brothers and sisters who were born in Kaneshin and in Paramakata and might not have, the births might not have been registered and so they don't have a birth certificate. The head of the village with a delegation could now do an affidavit to say this person was living in this village, he's a Guyanese, he was born here. And they could swear to an affidavit and take it to the GRO. And the GRO could now examine that and then issue a birth certificate to the person. But it is not just, it's not a simple process. It's a process that comes from the villages.
So if the Tushao is
correct,
corruptible,
but not the Tushao alone. Remember, that is what I'm saying to you. So when it get to the GRO, to the registration where the birth certificate, they still have there's a process. This thing is not just out to the blue. A man could decide, yeah, you are a Guyanese. It is a process. You got to swear in front of a JP, right? And you got to have 2 or 3 other villages with you. It's not a one-man show. And then when it goes to you get your birth certificate, there's also a process to get your birth certificate. When it goes to get registered, of course, the minute you show your birth certificate in the room, unless somebody objected. Suppose when you go to register, you get through all of that, and you come to the registration office, and I'm a PPP man, and I come in and I sit down and I watch this, and this person comes speaking Nigerian, or he comes speaking Spanish to me. I will object to this registration. Because you're saying you're Guyanese, you got a Guyanese birth certificate, but I know Guyanese, something about you don't sit right with me. I will stop the process. If I don't stop the process, then I'm doing my own party an injustice. And if you register, it means all of us are satisfied that you're who you are, and so on. So this is a tight process that is being tested over the last couple of years, and it works.
But you did say coming up to the election, you're feeling some discomfort about what is going on.
Don't let me go there yet. Let me talk about, so when the voting is finished, I want to talk about the security system. So when you finish voting that afternoon, they close the polling station at 6 o'clock. Right? Then they lock the door and all the parties are in the room. And then we know that there were 600 people on this polling station. So we had 600 ballot paper. So the first thing to do, they count the unused ballot paper. So if they count 50 unused ballot paper, it means you got to have 550 ballots in the box, right? And everybody in the room agree with that. Now everybody, when they folio, would have been ticking off when people vote. So you would all tick off, and then you count it. You count 550. Every one of us, 550 ticks. So we should have 550 in the box and 450 unused, whatever the mathematics is. Then you open the box, and the first thing they do in front of everybody, you count the ballot, you count the number of ballots cast, and it's 550. And then everybody agree, and then they say this one here is a PNC one, this is a PP, and the people got their tally sheets, and they're taken out in front of everybody. At the end of that, they write out the statement, the poll, right? Everybody signs on the statement, agreeing that is what it is. And then they take one of that, they post it outside the door, and every one of us leave that polling station with a copy of that. So nobody can change that system. That system is embedded in there. So every party official and every observer in the room sign on to that. You go back to your party headquarters with your SOP, and you take one to GECOM, and you take one to the returning officer. So the returning officer, for example, in Georgetown or in Region 4, he would have the set of his SOPs. And if the polling station closed at 6, you finish counting at 10, for example. By, I would say 12 o'clock, GECOM would have their copy, and the returning officer got his copy. And the returning officer said, 1 o'clock in the morning, we're going to do the tabulation of the SOPs, right? That means that, for example, if you're doing Georgetown, so everybody sit down around a table, so all the PNC, everybody come in the room with their copies of their SOPs, and the returning officer would start to call out polling station number so-and-so in Bel Air Park, here's the results. When he picked that up, everybody pick up their copy of it and double check. And that is where we went chaotic in 2020, Freddie. When he picked it up and he said, for the PNC votes, it's 200. People said, but it's not 200, it's 100. And he is arguing with people. People are watching their copy that they came away from the polling station, that people went to take photographs. When the thing was posted outside the door, it got 100, and he called in 200. And he called in 10 for the PPP, and so on. It was just crazy. So the system is so robust. If you allow the system to go from start to finish, nobody could interfere with that system. Unless, like happened in 2020, people inside of GECOM attempt to do that. But because of the robustness of the system, that's how they were caught. Not people can't try it. You could try it, but you will be caught. And that's why I think since 2020, we put in a lot of punitive measures for people who attempt to interfere in these elections. People could spend their life in jail. If what happened in 2020 happened again, election officials and anybody interfering in these elections, the new legislation would put them in jail for their life. It's punitive, very, very punitive.
Leonard?
All right. I'd like you to follow up on the question Freddie asked before we move forward. What are some of the points of unease that may exist or discomfort
comfort in him
or whatever? Is there something specific or a general atmosphere that you...
Well, I think, unfortunately, what we are seeing now, let me say this before there was a time in Guyana when people used to say we were operating in a demographic dictatorship. Because back in the 60s, for example, we had more Indian people in Guyana than the rest of us, Portuguese, Chinese, Armenians, black people. If you put all of us together, you should have more Indian people than all of us put together. So if you have a fair and free election that people vote race, they would say the people would always win, and that was a demographic dictatorship. That's no longer the case today. Today, no one party, if all the black people vote for the PNC and all of the Indian people vote for the PPP,
51%.
You still can't win the election. If you don't win the Portuguese and the Chinese and the Armenians and the business community,
mixed votes.
Now that section of people, you have to win them with logic and sensibility. They don't vote because it's emotional. They vote because it makes sense. So now we hear what is happening is every time you listen to the opposition should be trying to project and propose the things that they will do different. What are they going to do better in agriculture? What are they going to do better in tourism? What are they going to do better in manufacturing? How they will spend your money different, so that they could win the confidence of that middle ground. Because you know that their hardliners will vote for them anyway. That's fine. But to win the elections, you need to convince the middle ground that your programs are better than the other person. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing that. And so it is almost as if, I believe, it feels like if people are saying, we can't win the elections because we don't have any programs to win. So what we're going to do is disrupt these elections. We will disrupt these elections so that it don't happen. And the way we will do that, we will discredit GECOM, we will discredit the chairman of GECOM, and for a couple of reasons. If we are able to discredit the electoral system, which is a very robust system, if we were supposed to convince the international community that somehow they were stupid and they're not going to understand the system, and to say that this electoral system can't work, and for some reason these elections were delayed. In Sierra Leone only a year ago or a year and a half ago, where when the elections were delayed, they start calling the president a dictator. And it gives people the impetus to go on the road to protest against the dictator. Now, when that happens, and then you start to protest using all of the regular, oh, there's racism, oh, there's nepotism, or there's favoritism, or there's corruption, and then you create this storm for people to do that and destabilize the country. And that is why I must tell you, the president has made it very clear that Guyanese are not enemies with each other. The president has said this over and over. He said it to the joint service. Guyanese are not enemies. And so even if our joint service is going the road, we're not going out there to hurt anybody. We're going out there to keep the peace as much as we possibly could. But if for some reason somebody hurt somebody on a protest on the street, if it comes to that, then it creates a trigger for other things to happen. But if you create that kind of instability today, because Guyana is an oil-producing nation, we are now a strategic developmental partner in this region. And then when you have this instability, you go to the international community and said, to bring back stability to this oil-producing nation, we got to have shared governance or national front government. It is government getting into government through the back door. You're not getting through the government through a ballot box because you're not doing the work to get it. So you attempt now to force national front government, shared governance, and you try to get because everybody wants Ghana to be stable. With the oil and the amount of investment that has been coming into Guyana and will continue for the next many years, Guyana got to remain a stable place. And any instability, you could now start negotiating. Well, you want stability, then it got to be shared governance because you're not doing the work to win the confidence of the people who could give you the vote at the ballot box.
All right. I would like to ask, you are not currently, as you said earlier, in the private sector body, but you were there for many years.
Yes.
Also, you were one of the pilots during the Jonestown massacre time.
Yes.
You flew into Jonestown. And recently there was a controversy about making Jonestown a place where tourists can visit and see and observe and so on. A group of people are saying that you're desecrating the memory of what happened, and another group of people are saying, yeah, people of the world, Guyanese, everybody need to know and visit and see. Where do you stand on that? Well, what's your
100% behind the young entrepreneur who have started the tours and the trips to Jonestown, so that people could, young scholars, young people, families of the people that died, who may want, historians who may want to go to study what happened to Jonestown. I think it's we as Guyanese and as the country, we owe the world to make sure Jonestown is never forgotten, because we don't ever want it to happen again. And when you look at how Jonestown developed and the power that Jim Jones had with those people, and right under the nose of this government, right under the nose of the government of the day, they were importing guns, they were importing ammunition, they were importing poison, right on, and this man was becoming a monster right under the nose. We must never allow the world to forget that, so it must never happen again. And what these young people are doing as tour operators, I applaud them. And we also owe it to Port Kaituma. Port Kaituma, Freddie, have been a subject of and a victim of sometimes economic injustice. Port Kaituma, when we had the manganese mine at Matthews Ridge, they had a railway line from Port Kaituma to Matthews Ridge, and so Port Kaituma developed as a little port there, and people used to make a living from it. And after the manganese mine closed, Port Kaituma went into a ghost town. They punished economically. And then Jonestown came. And when Jonestown was there, they started to mix with it, because it was 900 people there, and they started to mix with the people, and they were benefiting from the presence of Jonestown in the early stages. And then when Jonestown died, Port Kaituma went into a ghost town again. And then Barama went in there. And then they started to do well. And then Barama left, and they went back into a ghost town. And then people come and they start finding gold, and the place started developing again, but it's still struggling. If you just noticed, only a couple of days ago, we had an entrepreneur who was going to build a modern hotel in Port Kaituma, because of these tours. So now restaurants, taxi drivers, hotels in Port Kaituma will benefit from people visiting the area. And people, they're probably going to visit Jonestown and spend maybe 4 or 5 hours. Then they will still go and visit, they'll still go to the creeks, to the farms. And tourism always benefit an area economically and create jobs for people. And so it is a good thing for the area, and we owe it to Port Kaituma for the people to create jobs and create the consumer capacity for the restaurants and the taxis and so on and so on.
If if asked for your opinion, what would you say to the government with respect to investing in certain aspects of restoration of Jonestown? Well, what would you say if asked for your opinion?
I don't like government involved in business. I think that government could create the enabling environment and support the initiatives, and the private sector operatives could find the investors to do it. I don't believe in government unless government. How government, for example, kickstart the Marriott. When the Marriott was coming on, the Marriott was a big investment. They had an investor. He fell out, and the government operated like a catalyst and kickstart that Marriott. No, I'm just saying to you. So that was so while I don't like government involved in business, right? I prefer the private sector to do it. So in Jonestown, I would say the young tour operator there, find an investor, go and clear the place and put back up some monuments and do it. But it must be a private sector driven entity supported by government regulatory systems.
Okay. Because I'm seeing if Jonestown is resurrected as a tourist attraction, the not the History Society, that place that preserves monument and so on, what you call it again, the National
Heritage?
National Heritage, I think. Yeah, that overlooks the preservation of
National Heritage,
right,
in Main Street.
Yeah, right. Shouldn't they have a supervisory role over the restoration, and shouldn't they determine what goes where, and because they would have the record and the regulatory framework for doing so? That is where
it's actually a good point you're making in that sense, but that's why the regulations, right? Why the tour operator will do it, they'll have to do it to meet some particular standards.
Okay.
And it's like heritage buildings in the city. So there are people who own a building, and if it's not declared as a heritage building, but you could own it, but if it is declared as a heritage building, then you can't break it down, you can't damage it, you can't change it, even though it's a private sector owned building. But it got to be so something like that. If we make it into a heritage site, then the person who own it got to operate at a particular regulatory standard. But you don't need government to invest in it. I believe in private sector. Let the private sector do it, government oversight it and regulate it.
There isn't a viewer looking at this program at this time and given your designation would not want to hear about who shot those 6 soldiers and the circumstances behind it, because it's across the border with Venezuela that the incident occurred.
Freddie, it's a real tragedy. I mean, and very, very sad for me. And the president spent a long time on the phone. All of them are back in the city now. They're with their family. They're in the hospitals in the city. And I must tell you, it's a tragedy. The president spent a long time on the phone talking to them, dealing with them. The CDS was there as well. We tried last night to get in. The weather was bad, and with the expertise and medical evacuation, we had everything ready to go and standing by, but the weather was just horrible last night. And even this morning, as we attempt to take the helicopter the first time we got there, and we couldn't land, the mist was so bad. But we finally got them out, brought them to safety. In terms of what happened in the river yesterday, now that they're out there being debriefed by the GDF, and we were obviously as they learn more, we'll know we know exactly what happened. But remember, when after this incident happened last night, these boys they had to continue up the river for hours to get to a safe place, and then we had a communication problem because this is out in the Cuney River, but now I think by later today we will know exactly the details of what happened in the river and who shot them. What we are almost sure about, because I could only tell that it was the Venezuelan gangs, But we will
It's
know.
not Venezuelan military.
We don't think so at all. But of course, you can't rule out anything until such time as a debriefing of our forces, and those men are done properly. And I would want, and the chief of defense staff will make a statement, I imagine. But I want to tell you, at the level of the defense board, the president himself, we are all traumatized by this very, very, very disturbing event. That this would happen, and we are discussing all of the ramifications of it and what could be done to prevent it from happening again.
Let me ask you what it's a oxymoronic question. It's stupid, but yet it's curious. Asking you, what is Maduro up to these days?
Actually, the border is there's no tension in the border. Maduro, the Venezuelans, the Venezuelans and the Guyanese soldiers have always had a good relationship on the border. They play volleyball together over the years. When I was in the army, we would fly in there. And the important point to note is that Venezuelans and Guyanese, they're not our enemies. Venezuelans are not our enemies. We have thousands and thousands of Guyanese Venezuelan families that are fused in family with children. And we have a tremendous amount of Venezuelans living in Guyana, working in Guyana. The children in our schools, they're sick in our hospitals. And so Venezuelans are not our enemies. And this is unfortunate that the government of Venezuela have been taking this attitude they were taking in the last year maybe. But I must tell you, within the last however long, there's calm, there's no aggression. Not that we are certainly very alert. Our forces are on the border, they're keen, we know exactly what is happening along our border lines. We have all eyes and ears on our border. But at the moment, it's very calm. And of course now with the new administration in the U.S. and the U.S. determination to ensure this zone remain a zone of peace, I don't foresee anybody being adventurous enough to start any conflict in this area. I don't believe that the U.S., especially against Guyana at the moment. Guyana is such a strategic developmental partner for the U.S. at this time. This oil makes us a very strategic partner, developmental partner. And the U.S. this is part of the U.S. domain. So from a geopolitical standpoint, Guyana and the U.S. is now really very, very close in terms of the shared values that we have, in terms of our geopolitical similarities. And we have declared, and it's very close. We visited Southcom, myself and the president and the chief of defense staff. We went there, and the U.S. is very, very committed to making sure this area remains a zone of peace. So our role and our strategies is never to. We don't want to be aggressive towards Venezuela at all. We can't be. Venezuela is our friends, they're our enemies, they're our neighbors. We can't change them forever. But they continue to be shown that the world will stand with Guyana when it comes to our border. There's no question of that matter.
The report into the crash. Is it when is it going to be made? When is it going to be discussed?
Actually it's out, it's finished, and it was distributed when an accident happened. The accident report is given to all of the stakeholders, the GDF, the different people, and they had to go through it and make comments. That process was done. It was handed back to the investigation team at Civil Aviation, and so I expect any time now it will be made public. But I, for example, was very against. You see, this was a military flight. This is a military aircraft on a military mission at the time. And if I want to remind you that at the time, we went, myself, the CDS, the president and a team of us went and we raised the Guyana flag on a mountain in the Escribo, up in the deep Mazaroni. And a couple of weeks after, or whenever it was after, we saw the Venezuelans with a video that they were actually pulling down a Guyanese flag and putting up a Venezuelan flag, and which wasn't our flag, but it made us. And so part of our helicopter mission was always to do the checks at our border to make sure the security of our border was intact, and so on and so on. And so that mission that day was a military mission on behalf of the nation of Guyana. That aircraft is filled with military officers going to do a military. And I don't believe that an accident investigation report on such a flight need to be made public. We need to deal with some particular issues of it, which we could discuss publicly. But I don't believe that we must treat this accident investigation the way we treat a regular civilian accident. But that's, the president would have the final say in that. I think they're parts of it that it's a military operation and needs to be treated as such.
All right. A quick question on, again, piggybacking on your private sector experience. Guyanese, generally speaking, around the country, several areas around the country. Some areas people don't have issues with it, some areas people do. The growth, the exponential growth of Chinese supermarkets around the country. Give us your take on it.
A week or two ago, I was driving, going to Paprika. And along the way, I was eating in the back of my vehicle, and I wanted to get some wet wipes. It was a Sunday, and I'm driving, and I said to my colleague in the vehicle, I said, I need to find a place, and every place is locked up. But we found the Chinese supermarket. Beautiful. I got out of the vehicle, went in, and it was a very well-stocked facility. I was able to go and buy the stuff I need, and buy stuff I didn't even think I need, and got my. And it dawned on me that, I heard people talk about these Chinese supermarkets and so on, but these Chinese are entrepreneurs. These Chinese are opening supermarkets in communities. You go to Sophia. People who live in a Sophia would have had to go to Massey or come to town to come to National Hardware. These people are in their communities, and they could walk from their house and go to a facility there, and they could get aspirins, they could get pliers, they could get groceries. And so Guyanese have to be able to compete. These Chinese, there's people who are saying, oh, somehow they're not paying taxes and somehow they're at an advantage to the rest of us. Well, the only advantage I see the Chinese got is that they're hard workers. I must tell you that. I'm sorry to say that for people who may be offended by it, but the Chinese are hard workers. You go there at 9 o'clock at night and they're there in the store. You go there when everybody else, when all of us want to lock up our store, our businesses and go home or go to a party, the Chinese are there ready to serve. And they're making a difference.
Mr. Gouveia, I want to take that argument in a different realm.
Yes.
Why should we, Forbes magazine doing the research, well, they have the UN statistics, Forbes magazine has put us at the top per capita of countries that have sent their people outside. What objection should one have about people coming to Guyana and setting up business? I personally would welcome the Moroccans and the Egyptians and the people from Iceland coming. We have gone, there's a place in the US called Little Guyana.
Freddie, you and I are on the same wavelength. Seriously, I feel, a lot of times I'll tell you, I sit in the Private Sector Commission and I hear some businesses complain, and I said, stop it. First of all, why are you picking on the Chinese? Right? Why are you picking on the Chinese? What is it about the fact that the Chinese are there, they're working hard, they're sometimes sleeping in the... They're bringing a difference to our communities.
On certain issues, I got a different opinion, but this program is
share
not
it.
about...
No, what are the issues?
Share it.
No.
On certain
issues. Me and Freddie and Double Bank, you share it.
No,
we got time?
We got 8 minutes more. Because of our migrant nature, I am a supporter of migrants coming here. I am...
Legal migrants.
Legal migrants. I am unapologetic.
No. I am not disputing that part.
But what's the issue?
But the issue
Jerry
I have...
will deal with you.
Yeah, certainly. The issue I have is this.
They don't pay VAT?
No.
Don't lead the witness.
No. There is one thing that you said earlier, that Guyanese got to learn to compete. And that is where I have the issue, because Chinese have diaspora funding and state funding.
How do you know that? somebody tell you that. You don't know that for sure.
No. I know that for sure.
How you know they get state funding?
You can't actually manifest it.
No. They do. The Chinese have Department of Commerce, under which they have what you call diaspora funding, for which Chinese citizens can go and apply, and they get it at low or no interest.
Wouldn't you like to see the government going to do that for some Guyanese businesses?
Well, that is the issue I'm talking about.
So
Hold on.
You subsidize their farmers. We should stop.
Let me complete. If Europe subsidized farmers,
we should
and then the farmers' produce becomes cheaper, and then you take those produce and flood the U.S. market with it, the U.S. can take you to the WTO because it is called dumping. You can also dump traders into people's country by sending them with a whole set of money to just go and buy up places and
you sure that's your interpretation?
I'm sorry. I think that's your interpretation.
No. I understand that. No. I can show you.
Know that for sure.
So we dump Guyanese in Richmond Hill.
Hold on. No. I am not saying that. I am. No, follow me.
We got 5 minutes.
Get him on a break.
That is why I didn't want, because I know it's an ant's nest. But I am saying to you that that kind of funding is available, to which Chinese are all around the world access the funds and
how do you know that?
Into the country.
Freddie, could you get him to give me the proof? Could he bring
No. I can do that. I can
journalism, you can't reveal
I can do that. I can do that.
But you studied in China, though.
I can do that. But
you speak Chinese? You speak Mandarin?
Yes, some. Yeah.
Or score some then.
No. I'm saying I can prove that.
All right.
But my problem is not even that. My problem is, well, not a problem.
So you want the Chinese government to stop that? You want them to stop that?
No.
Where was I going to get my wet pipes on Sunday night when I was in my vehicle?
No.
I have nothing against that aspect.
When I grew up in Guyana,
you're not allowing me to go.
If the handle for your jaw, and you live in Golden Grove at Broken, you have to come down to Regent Street to buy a handle, You can buy it anywhere.
Just let me finish. There are two things that I am not saying we should try to run out the Chinese or anything. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Americans run me out.
Two things we should look at. One, the arrival of the Chinese with Chinese government backing has run our people, the corner shop culture has almost died in most places.
Love dialectics.
And we, as a government and as a people, we cannot completely ignore that. That is one. I'm not saying that's one. Two, if we are going to compete, to use your term, we need to similarly get the backing of our government to compete with the Chinese who are getting backing from their government.
I don't have a problem with that.
Those are my 2 points. I'm not saying anything else.
Jerry, you would be familiar with the lady. You probably know her because of your long experience. Vashni Warner. She used to take 5 fingers and make it nicely like how you have dates now and put in. I spend a lot of money on dates. And we need for the state to finance, to reinvent Vashni Warner, where she take that 5-finger Jerry and we stop buying dates.
Those are the things I'm talking about.
What I mean by competing is being prepared to go beyond the call of duty, to work beyond hours, to give a proper service to the consumers, and so on. That's what I mean. When I first started with Rima, me and my wife used to go to Ogle at night, and I used to rent Benny Sankara planes. And I used to go and clean the planes and then turn up there at 5 o'clock in the morning again to make sure the plane is ready. So when the people come for the flight, the plane is clean. I was doing things that I found a way to make my mark where other people were not making the mark, which was the way I dressed. I put on my tie, had on my bars. People felt that because we were flying in the jungle, we didn't need to dress like airline pilots. So I'm saying that Guyanese got to learn how to compete. We gotta go beyond the call. We gotta go the extra mile as we provide services. Let me end by giving this example. A couple of days ago, I saw a video circulating on Facebook with some taxi drivers protesting that Giftland move them out and use in Book a Ride. And I said, man, maybe I wanted to find what was happening. And then a friend of mine said, listen, I just use a taxi from the mall. I got into the taxi, there's no air condition, the car is in a filthy condition, the driver was unfriendly, right? And a drive that was going to cost $1,500, he decided he could charge me $3,000, I could do nothing about it. And so I'm saying Guyanese businesses gotta operate, we gotta up our level. We gotta, the service we provide to our fellow Guyanese, it gotta be courteous, it gotta be efficient, women can't go into a taxi after a club at night and feel that they're being somehow...
No, I take your point, Jerry. I came to Ghana, remember, after serving the Maurice Bishop government in Grenada, and of course, you know what happened there. And we came back, my mother-in-law had a supermarket, and my wife and I used to make icicles to sell in the supermarket. Now, you have a man, an Indian or African man and his wife, and they close at 6, and the Chinese man with his wife gone at 10, but the operator say, our time has come, and I'm fascinated by I'm sitting next to you, and this is, in my view, what is that?
Defense University.
The Defense University. Okay, it's so, I can't read that. That's what I want to know. I will, even if I come close, I can't read that.
You know it, right?
Yeah. Jerry, we have to end.
I did a course.
We have to end on a note that you have refused to answer a question, which I will ask again. How many of these lovely lovely, good-looking, handsome tops you have?
It's actually a working suit. It's
It has a show, Jack Ambiance.
Yes. Actually, somebody gave me a name for it. It was the right. It was a style that came from Africa. The African leaders.
I think you said that before. Gerry Gouveiia, it's always nice talking to you. You have to write your memoir. Kit Nascimento memoir is coming out soon. So we're gonna have you
especially the part on Jonestown and you're flying in and out, and I'm extremely interested in that.
One day,
and if you need assistance in writing, you're
a good writer.
I would be available.
But you gotta pay you.
So obviously you gotta get a commission on the book. Freddie, one day
you tell me what the story is and I write it.
One day I probably will come and we'll sit down and we will talk about. But I'm at the stage of my life now where I could relate.
We talk about what? Let me know. We can
talk about the adventures.
Your life.
The adventures.
That's agreed. Give it a couple of weeks and here.
Part 1, 2, 3.
We're not
doing this in his garden.
We're not doing this in the studio. The first one would be somewhere else on your lawn or thing.
We could do it in Kaiser Falls.
That's agreed.
And then you could write as we speak.
Well, that's agreed. Thanks for looking at us. You were watching at the interview with one of the most interesting Guyanese. And when he writes his memoir, it is going to be a bestseller. You were looking at Captain GERRY GOUVEIA, successful businessman and now current security advisor to President Ali of Guyana. Thanks for being with us. We will see you on Friday. Have a pleasant Wednesday evening. Bye-bye.